Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Leswing, and I work for the Bureau of Student Wellness at the New Hampshire Department of Education. Thank you for tuning into today's afternoon bell session. Today, we are very excited to be joined by Heather Inyart. She is from Media Power Youth. Before I introduce Heather, I just wanted to remind folks that we are going live on Facebook every morning with our morning coffee chats at 9 a.m. We have our afternoon bell guest speaker series weekdays streaming on YouTube Live. And if you found this, then you know about those. We are also posting all of our resources and our live TA sessions on our website, nhlearnsremotely.com. So today we have a super relevant session for everyone about managing screen time and having a healthy relationship to the media in our lives. This is an important topic we know all the time for youth and adults alike, but it's especially relevant today with everyone remote working and remote learning. So we're very pleased to have Heather here with us. She is the Executive Director for Media Power Youth, which is a New Hampshire-based nonprofit that empowers young people to engage with media in smart, healthy ways. Heather partners with educators, health professionals, and community leaders to build media education programs that teach critical thinking and social emotional skills. These programs address how media influences children's physical and mental health, peer relationships, academic success, and social norms around risk behaviors from substance use to violence. Prior to Media Power Youth, Heather held a variety of positions in marketing, product development, and strategic planning for consumer product companies and nonprofit organizations. Heather lives in Exeter, New Hampshire now, and enjoys unplugging from technology by knitting, cooking, and hiking with her family. Those are also all things that I like to do when I unplug from technology. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the speaking baton off to Heather and let you share your screen and talk to us a little bit about managing screen time during remote learning.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me today. Screen time obviously is a subject that's near and dear to my heart and something we talk about quite a bit at Media Power Youth. And our goal is to help children and communities develop a healthy relationship with technology, to understand how media influences our culture and our thoughts and behaviors as individuals. So we love media, and we don't think that there's any one way to use it. And we hope that through our programs, we teach children to use media in responsible ways that benefit their well-being. Screen time is a pretty wide topic, and so I picked a couple of areas to talk about today. I will address why we sometimes get so tired using screens all day, and how to create positive digital learning spaces if you're an educator or trying to help your child do this at home. I'll give you some tips on managing your notifications so you can reduce the stress that you might be feeling with all of this information coming in. A little bit about multitasking, and I'll wrap up today with some suggestions for screen-free activities that you can enjoy with your family. We have a very romantic view of technology. We often look at it as this cure-all that's going to help us organize our lives and reach our highest potential, yet the reality can look somewhat different. And we all struggle, even before COVID-19, on how to process all of this information that's coming at us for all directions. And so I mention this so that we can remind ourselves to be gentle with ourselves when it comes to screen time, and know that we are all struggling with the same thing. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about why screen time affects our health. And our brain is our largest organ, and so it's a tremendous amount of physical effort that it requires for knowledge work, for us to who are working on computers all day long to wrestle with all that's coming at us. And this is true for kids as well. Our human beings, we work best when we have a combination of physical activity and mental activity. And sitting at a computer all day is not optimal for how we were designed as human beings. And often that's why in kids' classrooms, you see them learning in different spaces of the room. They might do a greeting group on the floor and then a math group at their desks. And so if you can build in movement breaks every hour along your day, you'll find that you'll feel more energized and you'll be more effective in your work. Another area that we see with all of our time at computers is experiencing eye strain. Actually, when you look at your computer, you'll blink actually less when looking at a computer than looking at a book, for instance. And that can affect your vision and can make you overtired when looking at screens all day. Many of you have heard about blue light and the importance of powering down at the end of the evening so that your body is able to wind down at the end of the day. And in fact, there was a recent study at Harvard Medical School that looked at those who were reading iPads at the end of the day to go to sleep versus book readers. And what they found is that those who were reading iPads at night for books or playing games, that they actually took longer to fall asleep and pushed their time clock actually later into the evening. And they were even less alert the next morning reading their iPad as opposed to book readers. So if there's advice I could give is to treat yourself to a nice hardcover book from one of our local bookstores. And I live in Exeter, and we have a wonderful bookstore called Water Street Bookstore, and they'll bring a book and drop it off actually at your home. So it's a good time to check out a new author, maybe that you've been wanting to read. If you can power down 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep, you'll find that your quality of your sleep improves and you will be more well rested from a good night's sleep. The good news for us is that not all screen time is created equal. So there's a much big difference binge watching your favorite show on Netflix. Well, there is a time and place for that. Than doing a family activity on an iPad or playing a game with grandma over FaceTime. And we encourage you to engage in positive screen time that's high quality during COVID-19 and connect with people who are far away that you want to stay in touch with. We hear a lot about social media and concerns about social media. And so I wanted to highlight what we know so far about social media. And the Canadian Medical Association Journal just did a review not that long ago of over 70 studies looking at social media. And while yes, it is correlated with depression, anxiety, and some measures of well-being, they saw both positive and negative effects. There were a lot of positives about social media, connecting with friends and finding support, and that the variances of individuals' experience with social media, it's depended on two things. They were on the quality of the interaction and then individual factors about our own personality traits. When I say quality and what high quality screen time is, that is when you're looking at a program or using an app, it's when you're consuming information and then you have to process that information and make a decision based on what you've read and know. That is considered quality screen time. When the study mentions individual factors, that may be a personality trait. So for example, some individuals are just more predisposed to compare themselves to other people. And so if you are someone who often compares yourself to others around you, then you may be experiencing more harmful effects in social media than someone else. We also find that social media can exacerbate mental health issues that are already underlying, that someone may already be experiencing. So it's important to get help if you suspect that someone that you care about may be experiencing a mental health issue, that social media can exacerbate that. I find it's helpful to think about screen time more like an object puzzle, and it's going to look different for everyone each day. And on some days, you might have more social interaction and a little bit less school. And then some days you'll want to be buckling down and focusing on assignments for students. And this can blend and shift and change throughout the week. We've seen educators have a lot of success with giving children a list of assignments on a weekly basis. And that really empowers students to set their own schedule and take some ownership over that schedule, and can make adjustments based on what other factors are going on in their lives. If it's going to be 3 rainy days that week, having your schedule a week ahead of time can help you buckle down on those days and then take advantage of the nice sunny day with sunlight to get outside. If you think about teachers who are giving assignments that might have a blend of social time, so connecting with the whole class at once through perhaps a Google Hangouts, and then having some self-directed learning, it can also be really positive. Just because we have technology doesn't mean that we have to use them for every assignment. And with us being home for remote learning, it's an opportunity for us to give students time to be curious and to experience the world around them in a different way. And if you can weave some of this into assignments, it can make the most of a student's time at home. The collage of pictures you see here at the bottom of this page is an assignment from a science teacher to look at patterns and recognizing that we do see repetitive patterns in nature. And so this teacher gave students 5 or 6 different nature photographs and had them look and identify the patterns in those photographs, and then step outside around their home and look at what patterns they could identify within their home environment and also outside their immediate area. And an exercise like this will help students perhaps look at the world around them with a different perspective. Media Power Youth has developed a series of digital lessons to help teachers in social emotional learning, in mental health, and news literacy that were released through our Facebook group. It's called the MPY Teachers Collaborative. And teachers can go on and simply download these lessons and use them directly with students. We wanted to lighten the load for teachers. We know that many of them are actually writing lessons while they are teaching at home and trying to adapt content. So we wanted to give them a hand and provide them with some of lesson plans that can talk about things like empathy at home. Many students are at home with families that are experiencing stress, whether it's 2 working parents and multiple siblings, all vying for the same piece of technology. And lessons like our practicing empathy at home can help children understand how they might adapt to stress and how other family members may react to stress differently, and how families can all help each other through this difficult time. So before I go on and talk a little bit about positive digital spaces, I wanted to take a second to talk about the process by which we got here, because we didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this shift to remote learning. Some teachers, had days to gather their classrooms, to be able to take materials home, didn't necessarily have time set up at home for making this transition. And because that's been the case, we may not have had an opportunity to establish norms in our classrooms as we would do in the beginning of a school year. So it's a great time to take a pause. Here in New Hampshire, some schools are on vacation this particular week and would have an opportunity to come back fresh on a new week and talk a little bit about how they want to feel in class and involve students in that process. One way to reset norms is to have a conversation across your students and ask them how they want to feel, not just during remote learning, but how they want to feel after. So if a student wants to feel excited, what are things and activities the class can do as a whole in order to create that feeling in the classroom environment? And involving students in this type of discussion will, helps them take some ownership over their own behavior. Similarly to giving them their schedule at the beginning of a week and having them design their schedule that will meet their needs as well. And we have a facilitation guide that teachers can use to have these conversations with their students. We encourage hosting a digital fire drill and building a plan together of what can happen if someone hacks into a call, and how should students behave. Should they stay online or leave the chat? When should they come back? And so it gives students some confidence that they have a plan in their back pocket should some of these unexpected things happen during our digital meetings. And lastly, talking with students about how to set up a digital workspace, a space that's going to work for them, that will promote their own learning. There is a saying that life is a stage, and one of the both wonderful things about us learning from home, but also a challenge, is that these windows into our homes are becoming part of our digital footprint. If you had watched the NFL draft a few weekends ago, there was as much chatter about the homes of the coaches and of the players as they were about the skills of the players themselves. And it's helpful to keep this in mind when we have young children joining in Zoom calls and chatting with their friends online. Spending some time to talk about which spaces are appropriate and not appropriate to have calls, and how they can protect their privacy by really designing a background. And so we want to help children put their best foot forward in these calls and not advertise a feature of their lives that they may not want to advertise just by giving away their background. I'd like to touch a little bit on what I call the myth of multitasking. And multitasking is something a lot of us take pride in and helps us cope with all of the information that's coming at us in directions. Can make us feel like we are superheroes handling all of this in half of the time. But it's really an illusion that our brains cannot do two complex tasks simultaneously. You're actually shifting between two different tasks very, very quickly. And what that does is it compromises our ability to focus and inhibits our ability to filter some of the unnecessary information that surrounds us. The quality of our work is going to be much lower when we're multitasking than if we were to do one task at a time. This is a great fact to share with students because if they do want to finish their work more quickly and to a higher level, they're much better off doing things doing an assignment one at a time than trying to do multiple types of work simultaneously. One of our tricks is to create a phone zone to store your phone out of sight when you're working on a complex task. This can be something really simple like a shoebox that maybe you decorate or make it your own, that you keep your phone in while you're working on schoolwork. It can also be putting your phone in a charging station in another room, which has the added benefit of actually building in a movement break. So you need to get up and look at your phone. You need to leave the room. And having this phone zone can help you work more effectively when you're working from home. One of the tips for managing your phone use during remote learning is to manage your home screen. And this includes reviewing your notifications and deliberately deciding which notifications that you want to have on your phone. Often phones the default setting is that every app will give you a notification that there's new information on these apps. And your phone actually is designed to try to have you spend as much time on your phone as you possibly can. All of these badges, these sounds and beeps that tell you new information is coming in, it's a lot like a slot machine. And it will, when you hear that or see that it actually is activating the reward center of your brain. And the more that happens, the more you want to experience that. And app designers know this, so they build them into your phones. So taking a short inventory of the apps that you have and deciding which one or two you'd like to have notifications. Some people will make a rule that they only want to receive notifications from people. So they'll receive notifications for their texting and perhaps a voicemail message. And then all of the other apps, they can still access them, but they won't have that red badge that you see at the bottom. Another trick is to make your home screen minimal by using it as a tool. So keeping items like your maps, calculator, perhaps your favorite music streaming service that you like to listen to while you work, and moving things to social media, to later pages. Turning your phone to black and white can help people by making it less engaging and interesting to pick up. And you can do this by looking at the accessibility settings on your phone. An app we like very much is called CM Pro. And so if you have an Android, this is a great app to check out. And it helps you simplify your home screen and allows you to put a mantra at your phone screen to remind yourself of what your personal goals are, an ambition, a hobby, a value that you want to keep. And that's what you'll see on your home screen. And there's a picture of it right here. On later screens, they have allowed you to simplify the screen and even debranded a lot of the apps to make them less engaging. So it strips out the qualities of apps that actually make them more addictive to us through this app. They are working on one for iPhone, so if you do have an iPhone, stay tuned, and you can go on their website and sign up to be notified when that is available. And lastly, charging your phone outside of your bedroom. Return to a simpler time and get a basic alarm clock that will help you wake you up in the morning. So I'd like to wrap up before we open it up for some questions by mentioning some screen time alternatives for all of the teachers that are listening to us. And these are also great ideas for families looking for ways to entertain and have fun with their families. The first is bringing back the classic board game and having a board game night where we turn off all of our electronics and have fun with each other. You can also use sites like FaceTime to play board games together. It doesn't need to be a game on the computer. There was an article in the New York Times a few weeks ago that talked about some games being better than others. So Yahtzee, for example, is a great game to play if you have young children playing with grandparents. Chances are you both have a game like this somewhere in your house. And each person can play with their own set of dice and score sheets. It's not something where it's very complicated to play a game like this together. Engineering contests. You can challenge who in your class can build the tallest tower, whether it's Jenga blocks or Legos or cereal boxes from your pantry. You can have a lot of fun building things with household items around your home. Another activity is writing letters. So many of our assisted living facilities are no longer allowing visitors from families. And this can leave some of our seniors feeling lonely by not having that human interaction. So a class can be paired with a facility and with residents there and give students an opportunity to practice their handwriting and writing letters, and can help seniors in our community reconnect with that community and feel less lonely during COVID-19. One of my favorite activities is called Scavenger Hunt Meets Story Time. And in this activity, develop a list of perhaps 10 items and give students a set amount of time to come around their home and collect those items. It can be simple like batteries, a paper clip, a wooden spoon, everyday objects that we use around the house. The key is to give them a limited amount of time to gather these items from around their home. And then when they come back together, you ask students to create a story time around the items that they've gathered. If you're working with older students, you can ask them to create a comedy sketch. And this is actually what improv troupes often use to practice their improv and develop their skills. So it's a really fun way to help children come out of their shell and enjoy a bit of storytelling. Fitness challenges have become really popular. The Boy Scouts right now are doing a challenge of a virtual 5K where they're raising money for food pantries across our state by Family 5K. And let's not forget about some of the fun we used to have in our classrooms, and they can help bring some levity to our Zoom meeting. So bringing back Crazy Hair Day to your next Zoom meeting with your fifth graders can be a lot of fun and help students, give them an opportunity to showcase their personality a little bit. You know, we have traditions of Christmas in July. Why not bring back Halloween at springtime at your next gathering? And lastly, sometimes the best medicine is a bit of gratitude and giving back. There's a wonderful resource we have here in New Hampshire called Volunteer NH, and they are providing guidelines on how you can volunteer and actually matching volunteer opportunities with individuals and how they're most interested in helping. So if you check that out, volunteernh.org, COVID-19 response, you'll find all of the guidelines and information about opportunities and how you can help local nonprofits in your area. And then with that, I'd like to open it up for some questions and discussion. I think, Catherine, you're still on mute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. That was very informative for myself. I've just been thinking about all of my personal habits that I could change, because I think almost in the same way that we ended up in remote learning without a lot of preparation, I think a lot of us ended up with a smartphone without a lot of forethought and kind of gotten ourselves into a place where, like you mentioned, you know, these are devices that are meant to be addictive and meant to hold our attention. And if we don't think about it intentionally, we can sometimes end up spending more time on them than we want to be or than is healthy. One question I had for you, and I just want to put out there to folks who are watching, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat box. And I've also been linking some of the relevant resources that you talked about through your presentation. But one question I had for you, Heather, was I've heard from a lot of parents that they're having a hard time separating their kids from technology when it's time to take that break or time to shut it down. And it might be schoolwork that they're engaged in, but usually it's the more distracting video games and that type of thing. And I'm wondering if Media Power Youth has any suggestions for parents who might have a little bit of a tough time turning the device off or having students turn the device off.
Yes. The first thing I'll say is that routines are really helpful to kids. So having a routine that you follow and set designated times for learning, times for eating, times for playing on devices, and having a conversation at the beginning of the day with your child to map that out together. So you're giving them some control and involving them in the decisions of when we're reading, when we're doing schoolwork, and when we're playing is very helpful to kids. When they're actually using the device, giving them a bit of a giving them notification of when we are going to switch into another activity is really helpful. So about 10 minutes before you're wanting them to detach from that device, giving them a 10-minute warning, then a 2-minute warning, then a minute warning. It helps them to prepare them for separating from that device, and will make that transition easier for them to move on to the next activity.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that, because sometimes when we get caught off guard and it's just like, and the screen's gone, because the kids sometimes protest pretty heavily. But a little advanced warning is a good tip. I also just wanted to kind of reiterate some of the things that you said that I thought were so ingenious that, you know, I hadn't really thought about on a personal level, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers hadn't thought about. but screen time being like a puzzle, and the way that we can really, we don't have to be so rigid about it, but prioritizing it when it makes sense, and prioritizing off-screen activities when those make more sense is such a great idea. And also the digital fire drill. I felt almost a sense of relief when you mentioned that. Have you experienced putting a digital fire drill into place for maybe your own clients or coworkers, or have you heard stories of folks who have done that and have had experience with it working?
We're just starting this. We actually have developed some talking points for educators to have these discussions of what to do in various cases. I think many school districts had, or individuals at home have been surprised by an experience that they have. And so we wanted to give them some tools on how to do this. Part of it has been jumping into tools without understanding the privacy settings and how to set up your technology. So if you are using a new platform for the first time, before that call, spending some time looking at what privacy settings that you can proactively manage to prevent others from entering your digital space that you are not wanting to have in that digital space.
Yeah, I know I've definitely been on some calls where they have had security breaches, and it's so uncomfortable and everyone kind of freezes and doesn't have a plan. And I can imagine it would be really disturbing for kids to be in that situation. But if they know that they have a plan, then they would probably feel reassured, and the teacher would probably feel reassured as well.
Mm-hmm.
One last question I had, and then I'll check our chat box, is, do you have any concrete tips for shutting the screen down 1 to 2 hours before bed? Because I know on a personal level, again, that's something I often say I'm going to do, and then I'm there 5 minutes before bedtime and I've got the device still in my hand. So I'm wondering if there's some concrete ways, maybe putting it in another room. I'm not sure if you have some tips for that.
Well, we do recommend having a charging station in your kitchen in a main section of the house, and having something that the family does it together. So everybody in the house, we all put our phones in this one place at the end of our day, a couple hours before we go to bed, and that's where they stay for the next day. Is a good habit to get into. Reading with your kids before bed can be a lot of fun. And I find it harder when I do that to then go back to a screen again. You really don't want to, after you've had this perhaps more intimate experience with your family, to go back to the screen is actually harder to do. So creating those transition rituals at the end of the day for yourself and for your family can help you break that attachment to the screen. If you have a hobby or something that is artistic that you often don't have time to do when our lives are busy commuting, it's a really nice way to get back into maybe a hobby that you've neglected for a while, whether it's drawing or knitting. Can be a lot of fun also to reserve time in the day for those types of pursuits. You're still on mute. You're still on mute.
I know I have a little one upstairs making some noise right now. Sorry about that, but
That's okay.
Those are such great tips. The common area charging station, I think, could really set that barrier between the screen and bedtime. So those are great suggestions. Thank you so much for coming out today, or staying in today, and presenting for us. I'm sure a lot of New Hampshire educators and families will have found this information very useful. You can check out Media Power Youth at their website. Oh, perfect. Here's with connection information where you can reach Heather, the Facebook group that she mentioned for teachers, and their website, mediapoweryouth.org. Do you have anything else to share before we wrap up, Heather?
No, thank you for having me. And we're here for a resource for communities, for teachers, for parents. And so please reach out to us. Any questions around screen time or other challenges that you may be experiencing related to media. And have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.